Thank you. Good morning. Thank you, Paul, and thank you to Mignon and Ryan. We've got the spirit moving in the room today. I can feel it. I hope you can too. Thank you so much for having me. Our opening words this morning are from Reginald Ray. It is undeniable that others and the larger world, so beleaguered at this moment in history, need everything that we have to give. But what to give is the problem. We cannot find out what to do simply by thinking about it. We need to gain our inspiration and our direction from much deeper sources. We light this chalice this morning and kindle the spirit of the great turning. The movement for justice alive in this nation today. May we feel it in our bones. And in the stillness of this hour, may we hear it calling our name. Amen. And now I will pass it off to Mignon for our opening hymn. Today's meditation is actually a story, adapted from a Swedish folk tale and from Marcia Brown's retelling of the fable. There once was a traveler who came to a small village, tired and weary from his long journey. The traveler did not have anything to eat and hoped that a friendly villager would be able to feed him. So he came to a first house and knocked on the door, and he asked the woman, who answered if she could spare just a small bit of food for him as he had traveled a long journey and was hungry. The woman replied, "I'm sorry, but I have nothing to give you. You see, I can barely feed my own family." So the traveler went to another door and asked again, and the answer was the same. "I have nothing to give you." He went from door to door to door, each time being turned away. Undaunted, though, the traveler went to the village square and took out a small tin cooking pot from his bag. He filled it with water, he started a fire, and dropped a stone in the pot. As he boiled the water, a passing villager stopped and asked him what he was doing, and the traveler replied, "I'm making stone soup. Would you like to join me?" And the villager said, "Yeah." He asked if carrots were good in stone soup. "Sure," said the traveler. The villager went home and returned with carrots from his garden to add to the boiling water. Soon another curious villager came by and was invited to join them. She went home and returned with some potatoes. A young boy passed by and soon joined the group, bringing his mother's bowls from their home. In time, a crowd gathered with everyone offering their own favorite ingredient. Mushrooms, onions, salt, black pepper, squash. Everyone wanted to be a part of the creation. Finally, the traveler removed the stone and declared, "The soup is ready." And the whole community joined in a feast where there had been none before. Well, good morning again. It's really great to be here with you all today. And this is my first time in Winston-Salem, but I've had the pleasure of doing some electoral justice work with you all this past year through the leadership of the amazing Ann Zimmerman, a dear friend. And to share a little bit about myself, which Paul said a little bit already, but I'm still relatively new to North Carolina. I'm a lifelong New Englander, and about a year and a half ago, I moved to Durham with my spouse, Ree, who is a family med resident at Duke. And it's certainly been an adjustment, but we have both fallen deeply in love with this state, and we're excited to be putting down roots here. Exactly a year ago, the opportunity arose for me to take over as the executive director of Forward Together, which is our UU Justice ministry here in the state. And to be honest, it's not the ministry I ever imagined for myself, but it has challenged me and changed me, and I am deeply grateful for them. Just as I was taking over Forward Together, the UUA launched a year-long campaign called UU the Vote. It was an unprecedented call to live into our values by engaging in the 2020 electoral process. But you see, UU the Vote was not just about the most consequential election of our lifetime. It was about being a part of this historic intersectional movement in our country for racial justice and environmental justice, for our health, our livelihood, the survival of our democracy, all of it. My friend, the Reverend Ranwa Hamemi, described it as an altar call moment, a profession of faith, not through our words, but through our actions, to become more deeply activated in this liberating movement and know deep in our bones that this is the place of spiritual transformation. And in so many ways, we powerfully answered that call. Back in the summer, our national UU the Vote lead organizer, Nicole Presley, challenged our faith to reach out to 1 million voters by Election Day. And so you can imagine that there were some people who were worried about us announcing such a massive goal for a small denomination like ours. And it turns out we were right to question that goal, but not in the way we thought. You see, by October, through our phone calls, our letters, our postcards, our text messages, we had already reached out to 3 million voters. 3 million voters. And we in North Carolina were a part of it. Over 650 UUs across 16 congregations in our state got engaged in nonpartisan voting rights work. We worked alongside our community partners to fight to expand early voting, to register voters, to work the polls. We hosted 13 straight weeks of phone banking where UUs logged over 950 hours of phone calls to North Carolina voters. And for the first time in our history, 16 UU congregations, including this one, came together to work on one shared action. And together we wrote 30,000 postcards, many to people of color who had been purged from our state's voter rolls. Not only did we contribute to record-breaking voter participation numbers all across our state, it's a 75% voter turnout statewide. Friends, we were a part of the largest voter turnout in US history. That's the power of our faith. And so here we are at the start of a new year. And despite the challenges of 2020, we are stronger and we are more resilient than we once were. Despite the dire needs of our communities, we have found bountiful generosity and resourcefulness in caring for one another. Though we are scared and heartbroken and depleted, we are called to meet this new year, this new moment of possibility, with the spirit of abundance. And that's really what our story is about this morning. In the story, the tired and hungry traveler strolls into town and hopes that someone will offer them food. But at first, the people of the village say, "I don't have anything to give." Like it's so pervasive in our culture today, they're responding from a place of fear and scarcity, feeling like, hey, I can barely hold it together myself. I barely have enough in the cupboard to feed my own family. But the traveler had faith, a faith in the town's collective abundance, a faith that the town actually had everything they needed to nourish one another, only if they could gather around the fire and watch the soup simmer until they themselves experienced a spark of imagination and generosity. Justice movements, large and small justice movements, are like a stone soup. You don't start with an exact plan and all the ingredients you need. You just start. You kindle the fire, you drop the stone in the water, and you believe that people will gather. And in being together, we spark each other's imagination and create a larger vision and offer our gifts and our capacity. Yes, it is a new day with new hope in the air in this room today. But we still face the threat of white supremacy, of violent extremism. We still exist in an unjust healthcare system, a fragile democracy. We still live in a country where millions are worried about their family's next meal, the security of their housing, and their exposure to this deadly virus in their frontline jobs. And so we all must, in this moment, renew our commitment to bring our gifts and our capacities to this work. In a moment, I'm going to do something a little bit unconventional. I'm going to invite you to add in the chat one thing that you bring to the fight for justice. And let it be a communion of sorts, a celebrating of all the gifts and all the capacities in this room today. You may identify with one of the roles that lawyer and activist Deepa Iyer identifies as being critical to social change ecosystems. She says we need builders, healers, artists, and storytellers, bridge builders, frontline responders, caregivers, disruptors, and visionaries. Perhaps one of those roles naturally spoke to you. And it's important that we are attuned to our gifts and offer them in the work for justice. Perhaps you can run Zoom tech support. Got a few people doing that today. Maybe you can take pictures or meeting notes or write letters to the editor. Do you have a truck to deliver food? Can you write Facebook posts? Coordinate an old-fashioned phone tree? Most importantly, who brings the music? Who brings the joy, the laughter? Who remembers the birthdays? And who brings the cake? All of these things are a part of the great work ahead of us. So let's do this. I invite you now to share in the chat box what you bring to the movement, whether it be a quality, a skill, a resource. And of course, it could be something that you're already contributing to justice work or something that you know you can give to help meet this moment. And let us now all bear witness to the abundance of this community. Hopeful writing. Angie brings online activism from Mike. Ann Zimmerman brings a memory of how it used to be and how it could be. That imagination. Jack brings support. Paul brings compassion. Monthly letters to the elected officials. Gus, that's important. This year, that's going to be more important than ever. Intention, passion, enthusiasm. Google reviews, yes. Help to make sure everyone is counted. We bring that perseverance to stay at the table. We bring laughter and joy and empathy and vision. We bring money. We bring money. And yes, we're going to need a lot of postcards this year. Determination, perseverance, caring, organizing, creativity. We're going to save this chat, and I encourage you to look through it again and to just bear witness to all that this community has to offer. Can you feel that abundance? Did you begin to imagine, and as you're seeing these things come through, are you imagining new ways that we can come together and help meet the needs of this unprecedented moment in our country? Thank you. And with that being said, we also know that we can't be rigid in our understanding of our gifts and roles, because being a part of a movement is a constant negotiation, a discernment that occurs in relationship with the collective, while standing around the fire and watching the new ingredients be added to the soup and asking, what can I add? There are two important points here. The first one, and it may seem obvious, is that you have to be close enough to the fire. In other words, you have to be in close enough relationship with our community partners and in our congregations to show up at the meeting and to be on the volunteer list and to know when you have something to offer. Second, we must also be malleable and open to change. Maybe you deeply identify as a healer or a storyteller or a builder, but are called to expand your sense of all the many, many ways in which you might live into that call based on the needs of this moment. Maybe as a fundraiser or as a social media lead. And sometimes in this work, we are called to go beyond our comfort zone and embrace an entirely different role altogether. Maybe you were one of those introverts who did phone banking for the first time last year and thought you would never do that. It's amazing how our sense of who we are can change. And that is what this work is meant to do. We transform one another, and as we transform this world, it transforms us. Friends, this is an unprecedented moment of possibility, a chance to not go back to normal, but to let the uncovered truths of 2020 give birth to something new, to meet the existential threats of climate change through a new green economy, to tell the truth about white supremacy that still lives in our culture and institutions and in our own hearts and minds. To fight for a $15 minimum wage and fair electoral maps and pandemic relief and healthcare expansion and immigration reform, we've got a lot of work to do. And this movement in our nation is a stone soup. It emerged out of a deep, aching hunger for liberation and a belief in one another, that we can gather around the fire of community and let it spark our imagination and hear it call out our name, call out for our contributions to this sacred unfolding recipe. I want to leave you with this question. What if we actually have everything we need? What if the capacity to transform this nation already exists among us and within us, and the only thing stopping us is faith in one another and in ourselves? In this moment when it is so tempting to be driven by fear and scarcity, let us embody abundance and love and generosity and joy. And when we do that, the table will overflow with all that we are and all that we can be, and our faith will be deepened and our spirits transformed, and together we will create a liberating movement beyond our wildest imagination. May it be so. Amen. Thank you, Paul. Our closing words this morning are from the Reverend Ashley Horan. We say it again and again, even when the proof lies somewhere beyond the horizon, beyond our reach, beyond our imagination. This is our faith. Another world is possible. Not somewhere, another world, another lifetime, but here and now for us and for all. In this time of despair and fear of collapse, this time is both like every other era and like no other time in history. It is audacious to declare our faith, but we are an audacious people, in good company with many kin, and we are ready to show up and work hard and stay humble and make friends and hold the vision. Starting here, now, today, with us, and persevering however long it takes, until that other world is not only possible, but another world is here. We extinguish this chalice, but not the light of truth or the fire of commitment. Amen.